I'm Rebecca.
And I'm Charlene. Welcome to Empowered, Life Lessons of Everyday Women.
Each episode, you're going to meet an amazing woman who has struggled through challenges both in her home life and work life and has become very successful. Elizabeth has over 30 years of work experience, including spending over a decade working in healthcare as the Director of Women and Children's Services at 2 major hospitals. She has been an advocate for women's health, working on the board of the National Association of Women's Health. She finished her career as the CEO of Arizona Make-A-Wish. Grab a cup of coffee, get in a comfy chair, and let's talk to Elizabeth. Welcome, Elizabeth.
Thank you. Welcome, Rebecca and Charlene.
So, you've had a lot of experience in a wide variety of different areas, and we'll get into that. But the first thing we want to ask you is, if you had to go back and give some advice or piece of wisdom to your 20-year-old self, what would that be?
Well, interestingly, I used to do a presentation for interns in my office on just this subject. My list is long and I don't want to bore you with all of it, but I think the most important it would have been to tell my 20-year-old self, first of all, be a lifelong learner. Always learn from where you're working, who's around you, the people that are around you. Learn from those you admire and want to emulate, and learn just as much from those you don't admire and don't want to be like. And work very hard at not becoming like the latter and being more like the first. The other thing that I wish I had known was don't gossip. I used to love gossip. Gossip is not your friend. And so don't ever do that. The most important thing that I carried throughout my career was not to underestimate the power of the stupid question. The stupid question is your friend. If you say to somebody, help me understand why we are doing this way, you'll not only understand, but you might make them think about it, and they might decide that the way they're doing it isn't the right way. So the power of the stupid question has benefited me tremendously.
So going along with the stupid question, one of the things that I learned in life that I've always done is I repeat back to somebody what it is that they said to me in a different way so they actually know that I'm listening. But I think that kind of goes along with what you're saying about the stupid question. It allows the conversation to go two ways and be more authentic in a way.
And that's a really powerful tool to learn how to do. Some people do it very, very well, and some people don't. And when you are able to do it correctly or effectively, you really make sure that you're all on the same page. Very powerful.
So I have a question for you. So far, we've got a lot of nuggets already going through this podcast, but my question was, who was your biggest influence?
Oh, gosh. In life, probably my parents, father especially, who lived and breathed ethics and taught me the importance of always telling the truth and being truthful and being ethical. In work, I've had some really great bosses and some bad bosses. And I would say that both have been powerful influences on me. Sometimes, in a lot of ways, the bad bosses the most.
Interesting. And can you kind of give us a little reason how they become, you took it as a positive way of learning when they were negative?
Well, years later, I took it as a positive way of learning. At the time, it was not positive at all. So one of them took credit for my work. Another one actually fired me before she could go. And then it was in fundraising and then solicit the donors that I had worked hard to gain big gifts from. So I learned about credit is something you give away, not something you take for yourself. And that when people are using words like I and me instead of we and us, then they aren't people you really want to be with. And maybe you need to leave the situation. And a boss who will take credit from you will never allow you to succeed. And it's probably time to move on.
I love that. That's actually one of the questions that we had coming forward. One of the things that you kind of touched on, and it's, I want to say networking, right? I mean, you've learned from other people. You've done a lot of fundraising for a lot of the different things that you've been involved with. So you've had to be able to use networking as a benefit for you. And I know there's a lot of apps and everything out there for people to use today. But I think there's something powerful with knowing someone, actually knowing who they are and networking that way. And I was hoping that you might be able to share with us some tidbits or words of wisdom that you might be able to share with our listeners of good ways to network.
So true, Rebecca. And I have to say, I got 3 big jobs that I frankly was not qualified to do because of people who I knew, who knew me, who knew my work ethic, who knew what I could accomplish, and went up to bat for me and said, hire her, you won't be sorry. And fortunately, they weren't sorry. I did well in each position, but it was because I stayed in touch with them. And LinkedIn is wonderful, but person to person is what matters. And as I went further in my career, I would get a little cranky when people from my past would contact me only when they wanted something from me, as opposed to caring about me as a person and staying in touch and just touching base. I still, to this day, get a card on Boss's Day from someone who worked for me. And
that's amazing.
Isn't that amazing? And I mean, she has worked for me in 25 years. And every year on Boss's Day, I get a card from her. I would do anything for her. Not only was she great at her job, but she was great at understanding how important it was to me to be appreciated.
So I'm going to talk to our listeners because I think we're really trying to talk to people that are younger, maybe have had not the same experience we had, where networking was part of what we had to do. I think there's a real disconnect now between the younger audiences and having that personal relationship. It's almost like they don't know how to do it if it's not going through social media. So I would encourage our listeners to pick up the phone, write somebody a small note that's personal, even if it's coming through like a message service, something that identifies them in a way that's personal, because there is a stigmatism almost to talking to somebody in person. Like I'll say to my son, just pick up the phone, just call them. And it's very uncomfortable. So if you're out there listening to us and you want to learn from that, the personal relationship is everything.
I think what's important to know, right? You can have connections with people, but you are much more apt to do something for someone else if you know them, even if it's just a casual or whatever, but if it's just on LinkedIn or all you've ever done is text them back and forth, there's no commitment there. There's a commitment when you actually speak to somebody.
Yeah.
And I think social media or email is fine. It's in a limited sense, especially if it's someone who knows you well. Like, hey, I was just thinking about you. Hope you're doing well. That's fine. But if you're trying to establish a relationship with somebody professionally and you have an opportunity for a person-to-person contact, take it.
Yeah.
If not, then
we all agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So I know you probably, just like the rest of us, have had challenges in your life. What would you say have been your biggest challenges, and how did you navigate those challenges?
Well, mostly time. Big job with 3 young children and a husband who traveled all the time, and trying to manage my family and my life and my work was really difficult. And because of the nature of his work, he was not available in tough situations. So thank goodness for my family. I had all kinds of childcare issues. I had a child who had some emotional issues that were challenging. And sometimes I had to just say to my boss, I'm sorry, I have to go do this thing. But finding your support system and appreciating your support system and letting your support system know how important they are is vital. But those were tough times. And I think how I managed it was by luck in a lot of ways.
It sounds like you also reached out for help, which we've learned is really a critical component in keeping that balance between home and work life, because sometimes you just need help and you just have to ask for it. So
that was on my list of things I wish I had told my 20-year-old self is don't be afraid to ask for help.
Ask for help.
Yeah, you need to do that. So our goal in this podcast is really to empower young women especially, but women in general. What would you define empowerment as?
Oh, wow. Well, giving power away would be the logical one, but giving people the skills to take the power that they want to take to get them to whatever their goals happen to be. So take away the barriers if you can, add to their strengths and encourage them along their road, whatever that road happens to be.
So that's empowering other people, which is huge. A lot of managers talk the talk, they don't walk the walk. How about if you wanted to empower yourself? What would you do if you wanted to give yourself that I can do it attitude?
So that attitude is tough because you got to believe in yourself first. And without belief in yourself, then you really can't do it. So you got to believe in yourself. You've got to have figured out what your goals are and what your next steps are and what needs to happen to get you there. And then you have to ask for help. You have to be the person to say to someone, you know, this job was just open and available and I wasn't considered for it. What could I do to make myself a more attractive candidate the next time something happens? You have to be brave and reach out and ask for honest criticism and feedback. And then you have to not be defensive and you have to take that feedback and criticism and learn from it.
Yeah, I was just going to say you have to be open to hear what people, because we all perceive ourselves in one direction, but we don't perceive ourselves as others see us. And so being open to hearing that and trying to take it in as a positive instead of a, oh, I feel bad about myself. Oh, that's a negative. Oh, you have to try to take it and say, these people are recognizing there's certain things that I'm doing. And now I have to figure out how to maybe listen to myself and change those things.
Exactly.
When I was first starting out, it was like one of the classic interview questions was always, okay, you know, what's the positive things about you, but give me a negative. And I've told this to other people too, right? You can take any negative you have and turn it around and make it a positive. And that's what you have to do when you get constructive criticism. How do I make that a positive thing?
Yeah, exactly.
So your career has involved influencing people, fundraising, a lot of different areas. Can you share any tips with our listeners on how to be effective and influencing other people?
Be a great listener. Really, the people that you're trying to influence are probably important or think they are and want to be heard, and they want to be asked. Don't tell them, ask them. Ask them. In fundraising, they say, if you ask for money, you get advice. If you ask for advice, you get money. And so
That's great.
so, I mean, I have done this. I have, when I first went into fundraising, I met with a friend of mine from high school who has become extremely wealthy and has become a great philanthropist. And I asked him about what was important to him. And he gave an example of that the president of Harvard Medical School started meeting with him because my friend was a healthcare futurist and Harvard was trying to figure out how to train the doctors of tomorrow, and just met with him periodically for about a year. And then after the year said, okay, we've taken your advice and we're revamping the medical school. And now we'd like to ask you for $1 million. And he gave the $1 million.
Yeah, I think, you know, you were also saying, like we were talking about earlier, but just that idea of listening and feeding back. Most people, I found in my life, most people really want to talk and to be heard, but they don't necessarily like to listen. So I do think that has a big place in fundraising or asking people to participate in certain businesses.
Well, and it gives them control, right? Especially if you're asking for advice from them, they've got the control of what they want to do, and they're more apt to give, whether it's their time or whatnot. Where if you're asking for money, your shackles may go up right away. Oh, they don't really value me. They just want the
Right.
Right. And the important thing is that they really want to know, they don't want to know about you. It's your ego to impress them. I am at your level and worthy of having this conversation with you, and they really don't care. They will eventually. Eventually, as the relationship goes further, they will care about you. But initially, they are nervous about why you're there. What are you going to ask for them for? What's your hidden agenda? And you have got to recognize that they are thinking all of those things at the initial parts of the conversation. And what can you do to ease their minds? I have met with potential donors and said, just so you know, at the end of this, I'm going to ask you for some money. But first, let's get to know each other and let's find out what's important to you and to see if what I want to ask you for meets your needs.
That's part of you being your authentic self. And I think authenticity comes into play there too, because people can read, it's, we go back to body language or just even what you're saying. People can read whether you're truly being authentic and from the heart and not from the head. And I think a lot of times, especially in business, people come from the head and they forget about, like, where are you actually coming from? Where is the thought coming from? Or where is the information? And so I think authenticity is a huge part of that.
Well, they get stuck on the agenda. And
Right.
that's the only thing that they're looking at is the agenda.
Well, they're very smart. They're very, and they've got probably a very active BS meter. And you do not want to register on that meter.
Yep. When you're talking, just watch their BS meter. I think that's great. I love that piece of insight because it's so true.
Yeah. Don't be a used car salesman. Be authentic.
Yeah, that's I worked for someone who was a car salesman for a while. It was the most uncomfortable. He wasn't really a car salesman, but that's the way you
Could have been.
We've all been there.
Yep. So sometimes in meetings, right, you have specific things that you want to get across to people, but they've got another agenda. They want to sidetrack the issue or whatever. Do you have any techniques on how to pull them back in to pull them back into the topic that needs to be addressed?
That's hard, especially if they're nonstop talkers. Sometimes you just have to be funny. You have to use a sense of humor and say, oh, that's great. But the reason we're here today is I've really enjoyed learning more about you, but our time is short and I'd really love to finish this conversation we started earlier. And you just kind of have to, again, you don't want to be disingenuous. You don't want to try and manipulate them. Again, that's part of the BS meter. They're used to being manipulated. Don't manipulate them. Be out front and say, I would really love to, a little bit of time we have left, get back to the reason why I wanted to meet with you.
I think that's great. I think refocusing people that's great advice. Yeah.
So you've spent a lot of your time improving the lives of other people, working with women's health, children's health, Make-A-Wish. What motivated you to really get into that field? Because you don't have a healthcare background.
No, that's part of those jobs that I was given that I wasn't qualified for. But the first one was in healthcare. And when our children were little, I stayed home for 3 years. And while I was home, I was Ms. Community Volunteer. I was very active in the United Way and in a child crisis center. And I served on several boards. And when I went back to work, it was in banking, which I didn't enjoy, and one of those bad bosses that I had. And when I realized that he was going to win and I was going to lose, and so I needed to move on, I started thinking about what brought me joy. And what brought me joy was my volunteer life, not my paid life, and helping others and but I knew I was never going to be the kind of person who put in IVs. I'm not that person. I'm not going to rock the babies, but I would love to be the business person who makes sure the resources are there for those people to be able to do their good work. So I completely accidentally got the job at the hospital because the administrator knew me from my volunteer work and knew that I was capable of doing what he wanted to do, which was get us more actively involved in the community. And that's how I started in healthcare.
And that kind of springboarded with everything else that you did.
So it
Yes.
sounds to me that one of your biggest life lessons is do something that brings you joy. Would that be correct?
Absolutely. I do everything that brings you joy, if at all possible. If it doesn't bring you joy, then life is short. See if you can find a way to find joy or find something else.
And we've heard that from, other people that we've interviewed, that joy, finding that passion or that joy is so important. And, again, we started this off saying looking back 20 years, but if you, or when your 20-year-old self. So one of the things that probably would have redirected you is that idea of joy or passion. It sounds
Yes.
like. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. In the beginning, you're worried about feeding your family. And so what can pay you the most? What can give you the best benefits? But as you get a little bit further in your career, you can probably expand a little bit and maybe, and it should be long-term joy. If I don't like this boss, but there are other bosses in the organization that I could work with, and find a way to get out from under that boss if you can, and go to others. You don't
That's
have
great.
to, you don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but you should find a way to bring joy into your working life, because you can't be good at home if you're not happy at work.
Oh, isn't that the truth?
I think it works both ways. You can't be good at home if you're not happy at home and if you're not happy at your job.
Yeah.
But we actually spend more time, at our young
in our
career,
jobs.
at our jobs, and we
Mhm.
forget that it should be something joyful or something, that you love doing. I was in creative. I loved in marketing. I loved going to my job every day, and I loved the fact that there was nothing the same that happened each and every day. For me, that was important to have that variety, not have that regularity. But for
Me
some
too.
people, that wouldn't be.
Right.
Yeah.
Everybody's different. You have, this is coming from one of our listeners, right? They have been in meetings where they're trying to get a point across, or someone is trying to, I want to say, manipulate them. And they just want to figure out how to tactfully tell the other person, no, I'm not going in that direction. No, I'm not interested in hearing it. Do you have any tips on how to tactfully tell somebody no?
So, in a meeting may not be the best option if it's possible to do it outside the meeting, because then egos get involved and defensive mechanisms get involved, and nobody likes to be told in a public place. So, maybe say, I'd really like to take this offline and talk to you about this at a different time, if at all possible. If not, then I would delay it and say, well, I've heard you and I'll take it under advisement, but let's keep going. But I think being confrontational in a public situation is probably not going to benefit anybody if you can avoid it.
No, you're going to burn some bridges if you do that.
Yep.
So another question I have is, we've talked to a few other people about self-promotion and what that means. Not necessarily, I mean, in a lot of cases, you have to boost yourself up, I guess, make sure that people know what you're doing. Do you have any ideas on good ways or effective ways to self-promote yourself?
Well, that was the hardest thing for me all along. Always, we were taught not to be, a braggart, basically. But I did find it helpful, again, to use we and us as opposed to me. Especially, rarely do you do something all by yourself. Rarely are you the only one who accomplished something. So if you could say, our team, and it was led by me, or our team did this, but you really do want to find, well, first thing is, I'm not good at journaling, but make a journal or make a list for yourself of things that you accomplished, so that when time comes, then you can appropriately bring that up to your boss. Maybe you weren't aware, but this last month, this is what we did, or this is what we accomplished. Because I always would be caught flat-footed when somebody would confront me with, so why do I like you? Well, what's good about you? And so if I had a list handy, that would be great. But I think that the more you can, again, give credit away, the more you get credit back.
So there's a saying, there's no I in team.
Mm-hmm.
I've used that as well. I also did in my career, made sure that the people that were working in my particular group or creative group, that they got the credit for what they were doing, even if I knew I was heavily involved, I would give it to them so that they could build their careers, because I had been in their shoes once.
Mm-hmm.
And I also knew there was a reflection. If my team was doing well, then I was going to do well.
Exactly.
The garden, basically,
Yeah.
right? I mean, you're making sure that everybody has a way to be lifted up. And you can do that in multiple different ways. I know someone had told me that they do affirmations, right, in the morning or at night before they go to bed, and they will look at themselves in the mirror and identify some of the positive things about themselves or some of the positive things that they've been able to do. And that has helped them build the self-confidence that they need to maybe empower themselves. But it also gives them that feedback of, if somebody comes and says, "What have you been doing?" Off the top of your head what that is. So I like that.
So this has been great. Just wondering if you have any other last minute thoughts you'd like to share with our listeners beyond maybe other life lessons that you've learned or other things. I mean, there's so many tidbits here that are just amazing. And I think that our listeners will find this very, very worthwhile. But if you have anything else, that would be great.
Well, I think to build on what we were just talking about, here, I was taught this early in my career, and boy, is it true. No matter how good you are at your job, no matter how much you're loved at your job, no matter what you succeed, when you leave it, 5 seconds later, they will have replaced you and you'll be gone.
Yep.
But your family can never replace you. And your family should come first. If at all possible, your family should always come first, because they're the ones that will miss you the most when you're gone. And that's so hard to remember when you are clawing your way up in a career.
That's a great piece of advice.
I really like that.
Thank you so much for your time.
It's been a pleasure.
Great. And I hope our listeners found it as great as we did. I'm sure they will. There's so much good information here. So we look forward to posting this podcast up and getting our listeners involved and hearing what you have to say. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
To our listeners, if you found this podcast helpful or have any questions, please let us know. You can send us an email at empoweredlifelessons@gmail.com, or you can visit our website at www.empoweredlifelessons.com, or you can find us on Facebook and other popular social media. And if you wish to share your life lessons with us, please contact us at our email, and we will put you up for consideration, because we are always looking for great insight, life lessons, and we really appreciate hearing from our listeners. In our next episode, meet Chris. Chris's career with the New York Police Department started as a parole officer and rose to the rank of First Deputy Police Commissioner. This is amazing in and of itself as a woman, but as the first African-American woman to achieve that position, it is truly inspiring.